All right, we get it rolling on the Krueger Show. Hope everybody's having a great day today. December 12th, 2023. 12/12/23, 12:33 on the West Coast, 3:33 on the East Coast. Guy Haberman, one of our favorites, is back with us. And the show today streamed on both of our channels, on our channel as well as Guy's channel. Guy, good to see you, man. How are you?
Good to see you, Larry. Thanks for having me, man. Good. November is a big juggle for me with college football going on. So now that it's done, I got my midweeks can be a little more NFL focused.
Well, sounds good. And, the Heisman went to the kid Daniels from LSU. Was that who you thought it would go to? I mean, I know that offense that he was in was so great at the end of the year. It's just that they were unstoppable. But, the Heisman's such an odd award. And it's like how they come to it is it the best player? Is it the hottest player? Is it the quarterback on the best team? Is it, what did you think? Did Daniels deserve it?
I'm a Heisman voter. So you're asking somebody with a vote.
Yeah.
And I voted for Michael Penix. I think
the formula fantastic at UW.
It was great. Yeah. I mean, I think the formula is this year, the formula was pretty simple. And I think if you blind resumed most years and you said, all right, you've got a quarterback who leads the nation in passing, who also plays for the undefeated number 2 seed in the college football playoff, there's really not going to be much of debate after that. The guy had, I think, 6 late game comeback drives, however you want to say it. They haven't won a game by multiple scores since like September. They beat Oregon twice with another Heisman winner. I mean, I just thought their degree of difficulty was higher, and I just thought the games were more valuable in the end. But when you look at where Penix got his votes, it came from the Midwest, Big Ten country, and the West. And, Jaden Daniels got his votes from the South and the East. So, and like in a runaway too. But I would have voted for, I did vote, not would have voted. I voted for Penix. But, Jaden Daniels was like Herm Edwards' quarterback. People, I don't know if everyone knows that with Ayuk.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, Jaden Daniels was at ASU. That's right. And transferred. And he had, and he also has Malik Neighbors, who I think is top 10 pick. And I think Neighbors is one of the best receivers in the country. I mean, I like the kid for Washington. Don't get me wrong, but I like Neighbors more.
Who do you have 2?
Yeah. But Washington has 2, right?
No, who do you have who's your number 2 receiver?
Oh, number
Coleman,
2 receiver.
Adunze, Harrison.
Probably a Dunze.
Yeah.
But I haven't, ranked them yet as far as receivers. There's a bunch of guys I like. I'll be totally honest with you. I like Jerry Rice's kid.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be a very good NFL receiver. I also like Leggett from South Carolina quite a bit. I think, Xavier Leggett, is that his name?
I don't know his first name.
But he's a talented guy from South Carolina. So I haven't done the deep dive on the receivers, but those are the guys that stand out to me. I like the Washington receivers, but I love Penix, and I would have voted for Penix for the Heisman. I just think the arm strength, the accuracy. Now, I was talking to Dave Softy Mahler, and he was like, he never gets hit. He's got a great offensive line, and so now what, we're going to hold the guy's offensive line against him? I mean, I saw him make some amazing throws against Utah.
And he did get hit. I mean, Softy's right. Like when you go, even Knicks was the same way. Sometimes they played in Zach Wilson. You remember Zach Wilson's college tape from 2020 when they played nobody except Coastal Carolina?
Right.
And every tape was like just a massive pocket. Washington's offensive line is one of the best offensive lines in the nation, but he got hit. He got hit a lot, and he still stepped up and made big throws. I mean, the first Oregon game, he was getting crushed in that game, late in that game, and made some huge throws. So, that's a more NFL eval thing to me than it is a Heisman thing.
Yeah, totally. Where are you with the Niners right now? I know you've been doing a lot of college, but the 49ers just get a 28-16 win over the Seahawks. They haven't lost since the bye. I haven't talked to you since they rolled into Philly and spanked the Eagles. And then I watched Miami last night lose to the Titans. I saw Baltimore life and death to beat the Rams. Detroit lost at Soldier Field to Chicago. I'm just looking at around the league, and I'm saying, well, wait a second. Are the Niners going to wind up being like the last, Bengals have lost their quarterback for the year. I love the way the Bengals look, but their quarterback's done for the year. I'm Bills beat the Chiefs. I don't know if I like either of those teams really. I like the way the Cowboys are looking, but the Niners spanked the Cowboys, and Cowboys can't run the ball against the Niners, and they can't seem to stop the Niner run game. Philly doesn't look like the same team. Who's standing between the Niners and a sixth Lombardi? Are they the NFL's best team right now by far?
Yes, they're the best team. I still think Baltimore. Let's see that game, and the good news is we're going to get that game. But they are the best team. I give Baltimore credit. I think the Rams are, I think I respect what Sean McVay's done since they got bad, and he's made them respectable. And that game was in the pouring rain, and Lamar looked excellent. So, yes, they're the best team. What stands between them and the Lombardi is, outside of injury, is I think Baltimore, Kansas City. I thought Miami losing on Monday night, tell me if you disagree, Larry, was bad for the Niners. If you want, not actually bad, but if you want to try and find the best scenario for them, I think playing Miami in the Super Bowl would be preferred to playing Baltimore or Kansas City. And I think for Miami to get to the Super Bowl, they'd need home field. I don't think they're going to Baltimore. I don't think they're going to Kansas City and winning. I know right now Kansas City doesn't look anything like the kind of Chiefs teams that win Super Bowls, and I agree with that. But the Niners don't play them next week. The Niners don't play them in the first round of the AFC playoffs. If the Niners were to play Kansas City, they'd play a version of the Chiefs that had gotten to the Super Bowl, right? So I think we have to acknowledge, if you play the Chiefs, they won't look like this Chiefs. They probably will have gone on the road to Baltimore, Miami, or both in the AFC playoffs and won. So what you'd end up with is if you just concoct the scenario where you're playing the Chiefs, what you're facing is a hot Patrick Mahomes, right? In all likelihood. And that would be, even though their roster is not what it was when they won the championship, you're playing Andy Reid on 2 weeks, you're paying Patrick Mahomes. That's scary. So I do think that's you have to consider that, even though that's not what Kansas City looks like now. I don't think playing Miami would be scary, and we'll see. I do think playing Lamar in Baltimore could be scary. And that's about it. I mean, barring an injury, that's it. Dallas looks excellent. Dallas for the first time in the McCarthy era looks good enough for me, who I've repeatedly not given them probably the credit that others do, just because I don't think they beat the Niners. But when you watch them, you go, there is a lot of talent here, and it seems to work against most teams. So, I do think you have to give them, at least, to use the Steve Kerr line that I love, appropriate fear. That's not fear. It's just, I know you've kicked their ass repeatedly, but even the Rams, you beat the Rams a lot, and the Rams got the Niners when it mattered. So Detroit, Goff, that didn't scare me before they'd lost 2 or 3, before they lost to Chicago. It shouldn't scare you now. They've got his number, but that's it. That's everybody. I mean, I didn't mention Philly, and obviously I do think I think you got to give Philly a little more respect than they've gotten the last 2 weeks too.
The Philly's limping right now, but yeah. We'll see if they can kind of regain their footing. And obviously, behind this incredible run the 49ers have had, and this resurgence and this where they're looking like the very best team in all of football, is Brock Purdy. And I heard your partner, John, on with Cowherd this morning. I think I saw a little blurb of it on Twitter, and he was comparing him to Drew Brees, Brock Purdy. I mean, I think it's safe to say, what I've been saying for a while, which Brock Purdy's damn good, and he may be great. I mean, he went, I think, 0 for 4 or 1 for 4, something like that. And then he was 23 of 27. He completed 76% of his passes after the first series or so, for 300 plus yards and 2 touchdowns, and just making some amazing plays. Where are you with Brock Purdy? I know you always kind of were more of a fan of Purdy, even when others were kind of saying, hey, Trey Lance. I know we talked this summer. You and John were much more not on the Trey Lance bandwagon and much more in the Purdy camp, but you got to be, I mean, is this guy the MVP? And is it possible that Brock Purdy is not good or very good, but actually great?
So to me, the MVP is, I do think, I do want to wait and just see what happens with the Ravens on Lamar. Because when I looked like a week ago, these numbers are not MVP numbers. But then I watched him and he looked like the MVP. So when you're the quarterback of a 13-win team, if that's what they end up being, if they were to beat the Niners head to head, then you'd have to reevaluate Lamar. I know Dak now has Dak is the favorite. Brock is second. So if you're second, you're probably a legitimate MVP candidate. And in the case of Brock, he's a legitimate MVP candidate. I personally, if I had an MVP vote, which I don't, I would strongly consider giving McCaffrey my first vote. Larry, I don't know how you feel about that, because I think there's a case to be made that he is their most valuable, that he has changed them the most. But then you really take a step back and you think about what this team was with Garoppolo and the way they've opened up their offense with with Brock. And it was so clear from the beginning. I remember watching them early going, I think Kyle's trying to throw the ball down the field more. And now that we have like 20 games of data, the evidence is in. He's throwing the ball down the field more and they're doing it more effectively. So, he has changed Kyle's offense. It's the closest offense that Kyle has had since his Matt Ryan offense. And it's one of the best. This is one of the best offenses of Kyle Shanahan's career, not just his Niner career, his coordinating career. His Alfred Morris offense in Washington statistically was excellent. They couldn't throw the ball. But they were one of the top offenses in the league. His Matt Ryan offense and this offense. So, he had a top offense in 19, but I think this one's better because of Brock. So yeah, he's an MVP candidate. Could he be great? He could be. Like I was really thinking a lot, and John and I will talk about it later today. And I did a video this morning about Brock and Tua, because I'm watching Tua last night, and I want your opinion on this too. I'm like, I started looking at the numbers, just all the PFF numbers, and like every number I looked at, the first 4 or 5 categories, I realized that Brock and Tua were like 1 and 2, like boom, 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 boom. So I started writing them down because I was like, how many of these categories are they close? And it's like 95% of them, but it doesn't look that way, right? When you watch it, I don't think they're the same player. I think Brock's better. Some key categories where Brock is better. He turns the ball over less when he throws it downfield, and he's been much, much, much better against pressure than Tua has been this year. And I think he escapes more pressure. He escapes more sacks than Tua does.
He's a little bit more decisive with his movements in the pocket than Tua, to me.
So this is where I need Tua gets the ball out faster than anybody.
Right.
So in that sense, he is decisive, right? I think that Brock is faster once that first read isn't there. I think Brock is quicker at making the next thing happen, which is, the game. So that was my theory, because Brock's time to throw is slower, but, especially on like the deep balls, but I think he does it better than Tua does. His completion percentage is higher, right? Usually you start getting into the time to throw as it goes up, that completion percentage goes up. Well, his time to throw is lower than Tua's, but his completion percentage is basically the same. It's like 1/10 of a point higher or whatever. So,
I'll say from watching them, Guy, what stands out to me is that Tua seems like he's throwing to guys that have more separation on the defender. And I don't know if I have a stat in front of me that will verify that or not. Just from watching both of them, my sense of it is that Brock his accuracy is a little bit better. He can throw it into tighter windows. His ball placement's a little bit more precise. Tua's throwing the ball to guys that seem like they've broken into the free and they have more separation on the defender.
Could be. I mean, the throw that Tua had last night to Tyreek at like the 5-yard line or whatever it was, up the, it was like far upper right of or upper left, I guess, was a ridiculous throw and a ridiculous catch.
Yeah.
But the way I put it is like, I think Brock seems more under control. Like Brock's games tend to be a little cleaner, I think. Tua's have like some weird variations of they can have some plays that look wild. Brock makes some wild plays too, but I don't think they're the same. The point of this is not that they're the same. I also think Brock's arm is stronger
than Tua.
Yeah. And we don't have Tua didn't do all the combine stuff, so we don't have the 10-yard split data and all that stuff that we have that's the beauty of Brock being such a low prospect, is he did all the workout stuff, that most of these guys don't do. So Yeah, you asked, can he be a star? The answer is yes. But I guess what I'm saying is all this stuff takes, if you're going to be a star, like if you're really a star, then you got to do it for a few years, and that's where like John's comp to Breeze, people will do to me, the comp to Russ is interesting. Any guy that wins a championship early in their career, I think it really just kind of sets you free to be yourself and takes a lot of pressure off of having to prove anything once you get that championship. And Brock plays pretty pressure free. Like, I think Tua, sometimes I think he's a little beaten down by everything he's been through in the NFL, all the controversy that he's been in the center of to no fault of his own. And Brock doesn't carry any of that baggage.
Brock, to me, and John made this point today, and I think it's appropriate. He's a better athlete with better movement ability than anybody gives him credit for. They look at his size and they don't, the one thing that we've been talking about for, a couple of years now on Brock is that 154, 155, 10-yard split. To put that in perspective, Tyreek Hill is 150. And so, I mean, Tyreek Hill's a blur and the fastest guy and uncoverable. And, he's electric. And yet Brock Purdy is, got a 10-yard split that's in the same ballpark. I mean, 154
feels like it should invalidate 10-yard splits.
I know. Well, and then you think of, the other amazing stat is that Tom Brady's got a better 3-cone drill than DK Metcalf. But, to me, that was more about DK's probably, maybe he didn't try that hard in the combine drill, and maybe Brady really tried hard and somebody got got their finger wrong on the stopwatch or something. But Purdy's very, very quick, and the escapability is there. John actually kind of compared him to saying that he was kind of like what the Browns wanted Baker Mayfield to be.
Sure, absolutely.
But I don't know if Baker's just, I don't think Baker's is a consistent personality. And so, Brock, I think, is a way more mature guy and a better leader and more consistent as a person and maybe just a better person overall than Baker. But
I would add this too, Larry, right? Like Baker, it turned out, and it turned out immediately to the point you referenced. It turned out really quickly that what worked in college athletically did not work in the NFL for him. And that's not the case for Brock. But I also think he's a more under control player. Somebody asked me today, what's the difference between Wentz and Purdy? I was like, it's a great question because there's two major, there's all the physical differences. And then there's just the simple fact that his teammates like him. I know it's a weird comparison.
Who Wentz? I mean, Wentz is a bigger guy, and he played at
he's
North
a premium
Dakota
prospect
State.
Is the point, right?
Yeah. Wentz's career arc makes no sense to me. He was a MVP candidate, and everything just kind of evaporated for him.
I know. Well, and that's the part about
huge
that
negative plays.
Yeah. I was just going to say that's the part of that Foles championship that will get forgotten to history is that Foles didn't just save the day. Foles saved the day for a guy who was about to win the MVP when he got hurt.
Yeah. Guy Haberman in the house, and people are like, get Guy on regularly. Yeah. Seriously, I've been so busy doing the channel and covering the Niners. And I know you and John have been doing some great stuff that I hadn't thought to collab with you in a few weeks, but I do love talking ball with you, man. And John as well. And you've got the always invite, and I'd love to do a regular thing with you guys. I should mention to everybody, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California on our side, and of course, New York style Italian sausage, as well as Underdog Fantasy and Mojo Fantasy and MarinAutoglass.com. And of course, we're on Guy's channel. And Guy, feel free if you'd like, since we're co-streaming here, to shout out your own sponsors.
Tito's handmade vodka,
crafted
to be savored responsibly. There you go. Yeah, do
they give you free vodka? Do you get lots and lots of Tito's?
I have run through there was a stretch where I had like a couple cases that was just impossible. I started giving it away. I mean,
hey man, how you doing? You want some vodka?
Yeah, come on over.
Dude, what's going on with Guy? Dude, every time I see him, he's offering me hard alcohol. I mean, just bottles of it. Yeah. I don't know what to say.
He buys it in bulk. It's bizarre.
He's that guy. Yeah. He's like that. He's like the blue hair from in the middle you see in line at Safeways with a 2-gallon jug of Gilbey's in front of you.
When I moved to San Francisco, I back in 2012, I had a neighbor like that. One very nice lady. And I remember one time she asked me she was had to be in her 80s, and she asked me to help her with her groceries. It was like a bag, and 2 of the bottles inside were gin. I was like, oh,
There
I
you
get it
go.
now.
There
Yeah.
you go. Oh man. It reminds me of a funny story when I was a little kid. It was the last day of school, and we had been driving this other kid to and from soccer practice. And his parents were really nice people, and they gave my mom a gift. And that was the last day of school. So I'm like, Mom, open it, open it. I was whatever, I was 6 years old, 7 years old. So my mom opens it and she's like, "Oh, thank you so much." And I have no idea what it is because I'm 7 years old. So I say to my mom as we're driving home, "Mom, what did they give you? What is that?" And she's like, "It's good gin." Right. Okay. So now we're driving to my house in the sunset and our car breaks down. And it's the last day of school. So me and all my brothers and sisters have all of our stuff and everything. So we pull in front of St. Ignatius High School, and the car dies. So she pulls it over to the side, and one of the football coaches comes out and she's like, "Oh, ma'am, sorry that you're broken down. Can I help you out?" She's like, "Well, we just live across the street. If you could help us, just move stuff across the street and I'll just call a tow truck." She's like, "No problem. Here, I've got my, car." So we all loaded our stuff in the car, and I yelled to my mom as she's loading everything in. I'm like, "Mom, don't forget that bottle of good gin that you have underneath the seat." Because she had put it underneath the seat because, you didn't want to have open container. And my mom looked at me like, "Oh my God." She starts explaining, "Well, it was a gift and this and that." She was mortified. She told that story for like
Alcoholic Larry.
the next 20 years. She's
6-year-old
like,
alcoholic.
my 7-year-old had the people who were helping us thinking that I drink gin out of the bottle. All right. So who would you give? You said you had a Heisman vote.
Mhm.
You don't have an MVP vote.
I don't have an MVP vote. Who has the MVP vote?
Did have an MVP vote. What do you think? I mean, would you give it to right now? The favorite for the MVP is Dak Prescott. They played head to head in that game. Brock had 4 touchdowns, no picks. Prescott had 1 touchdown and 3 picks. Niners beat the Cowboys and they beat them big. Now, obviously, they're going against different defenses that night. Who deserves the MVP more between Prescott and Purdy if it came down to those two guys?
I think they're both deserving, first of all. I'd vote for Brock, or like I told you, I'd probably vote for McCaffrey if I had to vote. But when you look at Brock's numbers, they're comparable, and his difficulty of opponents much higher. I mean, their opponent, whatever DVO. I mean, I think if you go through the strength of schedules, it's different. The DVOAs, right. It's significant. So like from that standard, if you started this year with a totally blank slate, I guess the other major difference between them, right, is that Dak throws the ball a lot more. Dak has like 100 more pass attempts than Brock. But from a yardage standpoint, it's 50 more yards. And I also think, Brock gets knocked. It's not like Dak's playing with nobodies either. Like CeeDee Lamb was drafted ahead of Brandon Ayuk.
Right.
Who would Shanahan have drafted if both were on the board? Maybe he would have taken Ayuk, but he might have taken he would have liked CeeDee Lamb.
They had a really tight relationship with Lynch and Herm.
I know.
So I think that was what swung.
I'm just saying he would have liked CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So Tony Pollard's like, he's 2 yards more per attempt. He's got 3 less touchdowns, 1 more interception. And his team is, while not winning more, winning more in the sense that they beat the other team head to head, kicked their ass. So I'd have a hard time giving it to Dak just because I've seen his career. John and I debated this. Like, I've always believed, I remember when Steph won that first MVP, you could kind of feel it coming based on the momentum from the year before. And I think sometimes it has to happen. I think it has to happen for Heisman's. Like Penix finished 8th in the Heisman voting last year, finished 2nd this year. You need some momentum coming into the year. And to me, Dak's never had any. Like Dak is 15th, give or take, in the Mike Sando quarterback tiers every year. He did have the 2021 season, right? He was excellent. That offense was incredible in 2021. So Dak has been kind of in the conversation for a long time, but he hasn't been in the MVP conversation. He's just been in the I'm an NFL Dallas Cowboy quarterback, and so I'm polarizing conversation. I do think people like Dak, like as a guy, I think he's worthy of, if you had to give somebody a break, give Dak a break, that type of thing. It doesn't hurt that he's Dallas's quarterback. I think it's pretty telling that he is the favorite now. Here's the argument I would understand on Dak also is I don't think no MVP voter. I definitely feel this way about the Heisman, but when you vote for the Heisman, you're not really concerned about what this guy becomes as a pro. It's not about that.
Right.
I do think if you vote for the Heisman, you don't want to look back in 5 years having been the guy that voted for like Peyton Hillis or Colin
right.
or, like a guy that's not, or Wentz, right? Like giving
Right.
Wentz an MVP, although he had an MVP year. But like you want it to stand up to history. And I do think when you're voting a guy that's got a track record, even though it's not an elite track record, it's a pretty damn good track record with Dak. You just feel comfortable that even though this may not be like the MVP of voting for Peyton or Brady or whatever, that this 1 year, this is like his Matt Ryan season, and history will not remember it poorly. You're afraid that you vote for Brock, and then Brock in 3 years isn't a franchise quarterback. And you're like, oh my God, can you believe we gave the MVP to that guy? So I could understand if people were afraid in that way, but I don't think you can vote that way. I think you just got to vote on what's going on this year. And this year is every bit deserving. And I think the numbers, like, I don't see where the numbers favor Dak.
Well, I think it kind of sets up on paper for Purdy. And here's why. Because Dak's got at Buffalo, at Miami, and then Detroit, and then at Washington. Okay, so look at the way the Niners finish. Now, this is a Dave Lombardi tweet from earlier today. EPA per play ranks of the Niners' pass defenses that they face this. Arizona's 31st, Washington's 32nd, and then Baltimore is second in football. So it almost, I feel like it could come down to how Brock Purdy does on Christmas night at Levi's against that Ravens defense. If he carves them up like a Thanksgiving turkey and puts up 300 yards and the Niners win big, I think it's his award to lose.
I think it's absolutely required that he does that. I disagree that it sets up for him, though. I think it's the reverse. I think it sets up for Dak. I think so much of it comes down to eye test. And when you're playing the teams that Dak is going to play, if you throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, you're just going to get, and you should. It's the way it's worked it's the argument we're making for Brock to this point, that he's played better teams. And so it sets up for Dak to go win it because of who he plays. Now, he could lose it if they lose games, which is possible. But if you have the game that Brock Purdy just had against Seattle, if Dak has that game twice coming up in the next 4, then to me, like, he kind of takes control. It's like in the NCAA tournament, when you're a bubble team, you'd rather have a difficult schedule coming up than an easy one, because you need those games to help you build your resume. And to me, that's the position Dak's in right now, is like, and the other thing is they play well in these games outside of the Niners for the most part. Remember, one of their loss was like Arizona early in the year. It was like, that's embarrassing, but I bet he plays well in these games. So I think it sets up better for Dak than it does
what's
for
Brock.
Brock.
Key for Dak, Guy? Because it's like, it seems to me that he's turning the ball over less, and he seems like he's running more. Is that his combination? I mean, and they maybe are not throwing it as far downfield as they have in the past. I'm not sure what
I saw a graph today that said, I don't remember who posted it, that he's just as explosive as last year with less turnovers. I mean, I bag on McCarthy from time to time, and some of it's tongue in cheek. I think they manage the game poorly, but Mike's a really good offensive coordinator, and they replaced Kellen Moore last year with Mike McCarthy. I mean, maybe that's the difference.
I mean, are you a fan of Kellen Moore as an offensive coordinator? I mean, what is your thoughts?
I don't know. I'm a fan of Kellen Moore as a Boise State quarterback, but
no, seriously, he was good back in the day.
But there's not a lot of evidence. I mean, the thing, Herbert's out for the year now. Another wasted Herbert year is pitiful. And the fact that, Dallas looks the way they look with McCarthy taking over, I don't think it bodes well. Now, Kellen's a high level guy, but I don't know. It's felt like he was about to be a head coach, and it doesn't feel like that anymore.
As far as the 49ers, do they have a weakness? I saw this, somebody pointed this out today on Twitter, that when the 49ers run to the left behind Trent Williams and Big Aaron Banks, against Seattle, they had 9 carries, 140 yards. When they run anywhere else, they had 7 carries for 5 yards. Is the right side of the 49er offensive line, and that would be Colton McKivitz at right tackle and either Spencer Burford or Big John Feliciano at right guard. Is that championship caliber? Is that going to come back to burn them? How much of a weakness do you see the right side of the 49er offensive line being?
Well, if you take those two guys and go, is this championship caliber? The answer is no. But then it's like, well, what team are they on? It's a championship caliber team. So yeah, it is, I guess. So run left. How about that? You telling me it's working? Okay.
They run left, but I mean, if somebody wants to load up on that side and just kind of force the Niners to run.
Okay, then they'll run right and they'll be fine.
Right. There'll be less bodies over there.
Yeah, the Warriors score more points when they give the ball to Steph. Is that a problem? I don't know. Give the ball to Steph. Let's find out.
Right.
You're running it behind Trent, right? So he seems to be he is able to handle more. He's been on your team for a while. Yeah, there are things that are not perfect. The sudden lack of depth at safety, Mooney Ward's groin that acts up all the time, the right side of their offensive line, not a ton of depth at linebacker. If something were to happen there, you and I have been talking for months about the D line. They shored that up. Sounds like Hargrave will be back, right? But I mean, start going through. I always feel this way, not to go back to college football, but like at the beginning of every college football season, I hate every team. I'm like, oh, they don't do this or that. They don't do this or that. That guy, but there's like 5 good quarterbacks in college football every year. Like everybody's got holes. And look around the NFL this year. Who doesn't have holes? So
I know. I mean, the Niners are probably probably the most complete team in the game.
Right. Yes. You're not going to be perfect. I mean, everything you do is about accentuating your strengths and protecting your weaknesses. So, they've got one of the best blocking tight ends in the league. They can put him over there. They do. They've got Kyle Juszczyk. They can use him there. McCaffrey's a very smart and good pass protector. So Brock gets the ball out quickly. They've got a good coordinator. All these things. I think it's fine. You wouldn't want it that way, but what are you supposed to do about it?
How concerned are you?
Run left less to
right. Oh, no,
be able
seriously.
to run it more.
Well, I mean, and every team's got some weakness. I mean, these aren't perfect football teams. And maybe in today's game, you don't need to be a perfect football team. Missed tackles. Niners missed 14 tackles against Seattle. And they did miss quite a few tackles in the 3 games leading into the bye week. What do you think? I mean, as far as, missed tackles, is that a sign of fatigue in your mind? Is that a sign of, or do you just credit Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet? Because God knows those guys were electric this weekend. I thought they had both guys had a couple of incredible runs. Maybe some of the best runs I've seen against the 49ers all year came from that duo this weekend.
Well, that's my first thought because both those guys are hard to tackle. So there's that. I mean, I don't know, Larry. I just trying to spitball because they have good tacklers, right? Dre Greenlaw's a good tackler. Warner's a good tackler. I say Oliver's a good tackler. I don't have the metrics in front of me, so you tell me if I'm wrong, but it feels like Lenore's willing to tackle. The safeties tackle. Obviously, the guys up front tackle. Maybe could it be a function of, it felt like, especially early in that game where Seattle's running screen plays, you end up in space with a mismatch, and maybe that's a position where you miss tackles. I mean, that would be just if I was trying to come up with a theory as to why it happens, because it feels like they have good tacklers. Could it be that tackling you are the study would be, are more tackles missed on screen plays? Because it feels like they had, Seattle ran some of that stuff against them, and teams do that against them to try and create a little breathing room for the quarterback. And those tend to be plays where you've kind of got one shot at the tackle. And then if you don't get it, it's, 15 yards. What do you think of that theory? You think that holds?
I do. I mean, I think the screen, also the angles, on screen passes. Sometimes, you've got to you've got to, sometimes you're not in a great position on screenplays. It feels like you're sometimes fighting through trash or moving at odd angles to try to make the play. It's almost like a creative chaos type vibe on the field where you got different guys at different angles, and oftentimes the defenders are in different spots. The timing can be different on different screen passes. Even if it's the same screen to the same side to the same back, you could have defenders in different spots. I just think that there's and it seems like they're always reacting late to it. So it seems, I don't want to say it's random because it's not random. But I do think that screen passes kind of create kind of an open field feel. And a lot of it's about desire to close down that space and get to it. We lost Guy, but maybe we'll get Guy back here in a minute. He just popped out, but we were talking a little bit about screen passes. Let me hit a couple of these starred chats while Guy's probably working his way back here. Moon Man, there we go. Moon Man says the great Larry lives. Go Niners. Bang, bang, Niners. Thank you, Moon Man. Here we go. Guy's back. I don't know what happened. You were there. I was making a point, and all of a sudden you were zapped out.
Closed the wrong window.
That happens, man. Iceman says, Guy is a one-man army. Not really. He works with John. He does some great stuff with John, but Guy's good solo or with John. How many times do you and John stream in a typical week? 3, 4?
Yeah, 2 or 3. 2 or 3. And I've been doing since the summer. I started just doing I don't end up with one a day, but maybe like an additional 3 or 4 a week in the morning as I get my day going.
And then he does stuff on the side as well with, what's it called? The
volume.
The volume.
Yep.
I wanted to call it the voice, but the volume. Daryl McCollum says, why is Brock not in the comeback player of the year discussion coming off of his surgery and performing at historic levels? That is kind of interesting. They don't view that as a comeback. The guy's career could have been ended.
Is anybody in the comeback player of the year discussion?
Well, because it's all about Damar Hamlin.
Oh, but I just mean like any year. Does nobody, there's no discussion.
Is there a discussion?
Yeah. At the end of the year, they just name somebody. And everyone's like, all right, good for him.
I think this year it was going to be about Damar Hamlin. Just based
that's a good point. But Brock missed a half game with his injury, right?
Right. But
so maybe that's a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe.
I'm not saying he's not worthy. He came back clearly. Usually that award goes to somebody who missed like a season or
right? Torn ACL.
Am I wrong about
season ender? But I mean, heck, you get your elbow ripped off in a playoff game.
Yeah, I don't want
he came back.
Denigrate the fact that he went through a lot. It was scary for him.
If you had to say how to beat the 49ers, is there a
stop the run?
Stop the run. Do you play man? Do you don't blitz, right? I mean, Brock Purdy is the 23-year-old quarterback that you just can't blitz.
Yeah.
Don't blitz.
And you may be able to get home with 4. I think he's 8th. I looked this morning, PFF 8th in pressure rate in the league.
Okay.
Like he gets pressured. It's whatever, 30. I could tell you again, but I think it's like 39% of his dropbacks.
Right.
Which is high. Now he's 54% completion on those, which is good. Here we go. Passing pressure.
Because to me, I think you don't blitz, you rush 4, you mix your coverages, but you play a lot of man, and you may want to rotate late in the middle of the field because he seems like he throws the ball with anticipation to spots, and he relies on his receivers to get to those spots. And there's a lot of in-breaking stuff, and there's a lot of shallow, intermediate, and deep crossers.
You ready for this stat?
Yeah, what do you got?
Oh, so Brock is 8th in the league, 39% of his dropbacks. He's pressured on. Okay, that's 8th highest. Number 1 is Fields, 48%. Brock, this shocks me, Larry. Brock is blitzed 43% of that. Can't be right. Maybe this is 43% of blitzes result in pressure, which is number one in the NFL. Most.
Okay. He's not blitzed 43% of his
No, so it must be
dropbacks.
43% of blitzes result in pressure, which is number one in the league.
Which also stands up
Right.
to the fact that he's operating behind a line that's whatever it is, middle of the pack in O-line win rate or whatever.
His completion percentage
rate.
on those numbers, 68%, fourth best in the league against blitz.
Which is very similar to what his actual completion percentage is.
Yeah. It's also right there with Tua and Dak.
Right. So he's been remarkably consistent.
Yeah.
When you think about it, I mean, for a young quarterback, you would think that there would be some inconsistency, a little bit more inconsistency to his game. And instead, you're seeing a guy who's remarkably consistent. I mean, it just seems like every game he's playing, he's not going to complete, he's had games where he's completed 95% of his passes against Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty amazing. But he's also right around his college career completion percentage, I think was 67%. And more times than not, that's right about where he sits in these NFL games, right about 67%.
Well, he's been under 70% once since the first 3 weeks of the season. And that was Cleveland. First 3 weeks of the season, he was under 70% in all three. And he's only been under 70 one time since.
That's amazing. That's amazing consistency. Kyle Shanahan. Let's talk about Kyle Shanahan for a second. He currently sits at 52-27. That's his regular season record since the start of 2019. So we're giving him a couple of years because the team was bad and it didn't really reflect on who he was. Those first 2 years, they were building up the roster. The Niners were gutted during the Chip Kelly era, but they were he's 52-27 in the regular season since the start of 2019.
Okay.
A lot of people, I mean, forget the hot seats garbage. He was never on the hot seat. And there were people that were saying he was on the hot seat this year when Jed had worked out a contract for him in the offseason. They just hadn't announced it yet. But do you feel like Kyle Shanahan has something to prove? He is essentially Andy Reid before Andy came to Kansas City, found Mahomes, and won Super Bowls. He's a very good offensive coach that's widely respected around the league that just hasn't and has gotten close to a ring, but hasn't gotten the ring. I'm sure you and John have talked about this because I know John knows Andy Reid well. Do you guys see the parallels between Reid's career and Shanahan's career? And in your mind, what does Shanahan need to prove to you?
That he can win the Super Bowl. That's it.
That's it.
Like, just like Andy, you do that, and now you're on a Hall of Fame trajectory. And I've brought this up many times over the last couple of years, especially when it was like bad. Andy Reid did not get run out of Philly because he didn't win the championship. Andy Reid, they went 8-8 and 4-12 in his last 2 years. That's why he stopped being the Eagles. I mean, it's more complicated than that, but like, I think sometimes people think Andy went 10-6 and got fired in Philadelphia. That's not what happened. He went 4-12. And I think John remembers this because he was there. I think they lost, like, of those four, I think they might have started like 4-1 or 4-0, or like, I think they not only, you know what it was? It was the year before when they went 8-8. It fell apart at the end of that year. So they had a bad end to an 8-8 season, and then they went 4-12 the next year. So in that sense, yeah, it's now I will say this on the other side of that coin. He won the league. He won his division a lot more. He went to more NFC championship games. Like, felt like his team was a Super Bowl contender more. But that was also 11 years where there was like a decade straight where he was a Super Bowl contender almost every year in Philadelphia, which is pretty incredible. So yeah, the thing that Kyle has to prove is that he can, in the biggest games, beat Reid and Mahomes, or Harbaugh and Lamar, or Hurts and Sirianni. No, that doesn't seem to hold up.
But do you blame him for the way he's coached in big games? A lot of people feel going back to when they led 28-3 against Tom Brady, that Kyle, something happens in these games.
No, I don't think so.
You don't. You don't feel like there's anything.
I think what happened in that game is he just kept coaching it like any other game. That's what happened in the Atlanta game.
Yeah.
But I think he's gotten better since then. And I still think, he's the end of the first half management would be the thing if you're doing a study. It's been pretty inconsistent. Now, I think he's gotten more aggressive with Brock. The end of the first half on Sunday against Seattle left something to be desired. His explanation after the game was he was not on the same page with the officials and understanding that they were going to wind the clock after the ready for play, after the whistle, instead of on the snap. And the Seattle was able to run, like 25 seconds off the clock then. But so that would be like the question in those moments. But otherwise, I think he's a championship coach. I think he's a Super Bowl winning coach without a Super Bowl yet. Now, maybe I'll keep saying that and he won't win a Super Bowl and it'll be proven wrong. But I don't think he has failed to win a Super Bowl because he's incapable of it or calls the game incorrectly in big games. But he still has to prove that. That's just what I think. Like, he hasn't done it yet.
I don't think he's had the quarterback yet. I know Matt Ryan won the MVP. They had a historic run on first down. I think their offense in Atlanta averaged like almost 9 yards on first down, which is very, very good. Matt Ryan was spectacular that year. They had a bevy of weapons, but they lost to Tom Brady. Tom Brady's better. Okay. They lost Jimmy Garoppolo, lost to Stafford. Stafford was better. Jimmy Garoppolo lost to Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes was better and made more plays. So I think he's not going to win until his quarterback is better in the winner's circle, and that quarterback plays well. My only complaint with Kyle Shanahan would be when the money's on the table, I need to see the money players touch the ball.
Yeah.
Deebo Samuel had 2 touches in the second half against Kansas City in the Super Bowl. He was, in my mind, the MVP in the first half. He needs to touch the ball more. When the Niners got into got to have it NFC title game against the Rams, Stafford went to Cooper Kupp repeatedly. You got to go to your money guys. So they got to find a way to get the ball in the hands of their money guys.
They have more money guys now.
They do.
Like, who's on the field that's not? Who are you getting the ball to that isn't a money guy on this team?
Yeah.
When you're healthy.
Charlie Warner.
Yeah.
Ronnie Bell. Juwan Jennings is
a money guy.
Yeah, he's definitely a money guy.
And on 3rd and 7,
CMC.
that's throw him the ball.
Yeah. 3rd and Juwan.
Yeah.
Very underrated player.
Is he going to get Kendrick Bourne's contract?
Elsewhere, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a terrific player. He really is.
He really is.
A couple last ones with Guy Haberman. We got about 10 more minutes in the stream here. And I'm really glad to have you, man. I loved this summer talking ball with you. We had a lot of great conversations in and around Niner training camp as we were both sweating. You were making notes on your boards, and I was trying to figure out how to film everything and write everything down, and looking around as people were saying, Trey Lance is the best quarterback on the field.
He never was.
And he never was. And I couldn't believe what was going on out there. But NBC has passed on Al Michaels for the playoffs. Have you seen that? Did you see that story this morning?
I several of my buddies in broadcasting sent me that story today. Yeah.
It's like a new era. They're going to go with Ian Eagles' kid, Noah, who's 26, as the play-by-play voice for their number 2 NFL playoff broadcast in January, passing on Al Michaels. The New York Post reporting this. Tirico and Collinsworth have the call on 3 of the network's 4 playoff broadcasts next month, including 1 game on Peacock. But NBC declined to bring back Michaels for the 4th game. Now, I have not watched a lot of the Thursday night Amazon broadcast, but there have been so many people, my son included, that have said, man, Michaels has been so low energy. I think Al Michaels is the greatest of all time. I just think he's so damn good. I love Al Michaels. He's used to do Giants games. I think he's one of the very, very best. But everybody's got their day, and everybody's day is over at some point. I'm not asking you to comment on that. I would never ask you to do that. But I just, as somebody who does this for a living, who are your favorites? Who do you enjoy? Because you probably have a more critical ear for the broadcasts, and you probably have a better sense of it than I do. Who are Guy Haberman's favorite play-by-play guys, and where does Michael's career-wise sit on that list?
I mean, career-wise, it's it's at the top. I love, my dad was in the Air Force, but he's from Baltimore, Maryland. So before we started moving around, when I was very young, we were in Baltimore when John Miller was the voice of the Orioles. And then, so I was an Orioles fan. And then we were moving around and, all over the country and abroad, and came back. And then we moved to California, to Davis in Northern California in 99. And John Miller was the voice of the Orioles. So, I mean, the Giants. So John Miller for, my childhood was definitely atop that list. Like, he's one of the most talented. Al, everybody, there are so many things from different guys that you love, like Costas's ability to be eloquent off the cuff is, he's one of the best at that. I think one of the things that I learned from Al is how quickly Al doesn't waste time hearing himself talk when it comes to telling a story about a player, right? So some guys will take 3 snaps to tell you about Larry Krueger's background. Al will do it in 15 seconds, right? Larry Krueger from San Francisco, California, and then bam, 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 drafted 15th overall. Then he had a knee injury, and now he's come back and he's the comeback player of the year. Like, Al will do it fast, where some guys will drag it out and drag it out and drag it out. Tirico is the same thing as Al. Like, he's the same at that. Joe Davis, I think, is excellent at nobody identifies faster than Joe in terms of who catches the ball, who's about to catch the ball, who the ball's going to, who made the tackle. I think and he nails big calls. He nails big calls all the time. I think he's one of the best at nailing big calls. Chris Fowler's excellent at context, like always on top of the context of a situation. So I'm not really answering your question directly because it's hard.
Well,
it really is.
I like your
like, this is the
consciousness.
Conversation off the air I'd be having with you. It's like, it's hard to say, here's the one guy who does everything perfect. I don't think there's such a thing, but I think Joe has gotten, his simplicity is what he gets a lot of credit for, and it's rightful. Like, he's very good at that. He's excellent at it. In a business where a lot of people overtalk it. I'm sure I'm forgetting a million people.
Is there an underrated young guy that we don't know of yet that you've identified as really good, outside of yourself, of course? Present. There's this guy out of the Bay Area named Haberman. You really got to listen.
I do think I'm good, Larry. Thank you. Well, he's not underrated. I think,
or just somebody maybe that we wouldn't know necessarily, or we know, but we just don't have the same appreciation for yet.
Yeah. That's a good question.
Because these jobs don't turn over that fast. A lot of these guys have been doing this forever. Yeah. I mean, I just mentioned Ian Eagle's kid. I think he's pretty good. I've always been kind of a fan of Ian Eagle as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's not for like me giving this guy a compliment is silly because he's excellent. And I think most people know it already. Jason Benetti, who does the number 2 Fox game with Brock Heward. He was the Whites. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So he was the number 2 he was the White Sox TV guy. Now he moved to the White Sox, to the Tigers. But I think he is like, I don't want to say he's underrated because he's not underrated, but he's so good at football. Like, I think he is excellent. So that's kind of a newish guy, but again, like, he's not new. That's not under the radar.
Right.
Under the radar. It's hard to be under the radar.
Oh, I know. No, I mean, heck, it's hard to break into that biz, guys. And once it takes a while to break in too. It's not just, you don't break in a day.
No, you don't. Yeah.
What bowl games are you going to be? I'm a big bowl game guy. What, if I want to
still.
Oh no, I love bowl games. Are you kidding me? I watch all the bowl games. I'm the guy watching the freaking whatever bowl. I'll watch the bowl, the Menike Car Care Bowl. I'm there. What will you, Guy Haberman, if I want to say, you know what, I want to make sure I catch all of Guy Haberman's bowls. By the way, you know what I really
I'm not
like?
doing the bowl. Yeah.
I like Dave Fleming.
Yeah. But Dave's not, I don't feel that's not an underrated.
No, not an underrated, but he might be underrated on a national scale.
You think?
Well, not I mean, he's obviously, very accomplished now. But I mean, if you say Dave Fleming in the middle of Chicago, I don't know that people necessarily are like, oh yeah, Dave Fleming,
Yeah.
They know that he's good when they hear him and they like him when they hear him.
He's so comfortable, which is like,
just, I think
in theory, the easiest thing, but it's not the easiest thing.
Exactly.
And then he's also like so good at context.
Yeah.
It really, it's
smart.
Somebody said to me the other day, when Warner and DK got into it, and they threw a flag and then they threw the hat. And there was a debate on TV. They were trying to figure out, was the first flag, what was it for? Was it on Warner? I thought they didn't, because they only announced one penalty on each guy, one on him and one on Lenore. I thought the first flag was for the body slam tackle by DK, and then the hat was for DK pushing him in the face. And somebody said to me, well, how are these guys not seeing it? And I like, that crew's really good. There was so much going on. It's so easy to miss one look. It's just, I hate to say it, but sometimes things get missed, especially if it's happening like on your monitor and you're watching something or whatever. And that's where like Fleming is, like, he never misses stuff. Nance never misses stuff like that. I think Jim's really good too.
Maybe because Tom Spencer's been his spotter forever.
Spanky. I don't know Tom Spencer.
He used to work at CanBR. He works with Nance on.
Yeah,
on
I mean,
a
good spotter is like a second brain, really. So
yeah, Joe Castellano, I think, worked with Greg Gumbel for a long time.
Oh, that's cool.
But yeah, no, I'm a big fan of Dave. I like Dave. I think he strikes the right chord.
Yeah.
He's smart, but he's not sitting there trying to prove to you he's smart. You know what I mean? He stays out of the way of the broadcast, but he still is really, really, really good. And he can do a lot of things.
Yeah.
He can do Little League World Series. He can do the Giants. He can do golf. He can do
basketball.
He sounds, and maybe because I know Dave and I like Dave, but I also
Agreed.
I really think Dave's good. Okay,
bowl
last
game.
one.
Arizona.
You are
Oklahoma.
doing bowl games. I think
No, I'm not doing one. You said one to watch. Arizona, Oklahoma. That's one I like.
As far as the matchup, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Give me what you think of who's going to win Alabama, Michigan, and Texas, Washington, the national semis on ESPN on January 1st.
I don't want to be a homer, but I think Washington's going to win the national championship.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. Because
Huskies have been really good. I've caught them a bunch this year. Their defense is good. Who's that back they have? They run the ball well now.
Dylan Johnson, transfer from Mississippi State.
Yeah,
the problem with them is they've played in, like I told you earlier, only close games. Like they play in 1-score games going back to September. So they have some of that, like, before the Niners played the Eagles thing where people go like, you can't sustain this. But I think their coach, Kalen DeBoer is one of the best big game coaches in college football already. And we'll look back in 5-6 years and go, oh yeah, that's one of the best big game coaches in college football. He's got a month to prepare. Now Sark's team is actually good, and a month to prepare for Sark, I think, is significant. But I think you give Kalen DeBoer a month to prepare, and I think it's going to be really tough to beat. So I think Washington beats Texas.
Okay, Washington's a 4-point underdog in that game. I do like Washington.
I love UW in the points in that game. I also think that there's a difference between giving Harbaugh a month and giving Saban a month. I think Alabama has the advantage there. I'd rather play Alabama with a week to prepare than Michigan, and I'd rather play Michigan with a month to prepare than Alabama, if that makes sense. So I think
Alabama, huh?
So I like Bama because I think I think his month is just going to be more productive in terms of preparation than Harbaugh's. And Harbaugh's coaching a lot of these big games. I question whether or not they can, from his Niner time and from his Michigan time, whether in this type of game he can really win it. Last year they got beat by TCU, remember? So I think Alabama wins that game, but I don't think Alabama's as good as Michigan. So then I think you have the far superior passing game and quarterback on Washington's side than Alabama's side, and that's why I think Washington wins.
Could you imagine if the Huskies win the national championship in a year where the conference is gone? That's it.
I know.
I mean, wow. That would be a fitting end. That would be amazing.
It would be bittersweet without the sweet, just bitter.
Yeah, just bitter. And whoever the head of the Pac-12 is, that guy, oh my God. I won't even make you comment because I know you don't want to. Hey, let me just throw these last supers in here. Artemis 4994 says, if Brock wins, does he get Jimmy G type extension? I think he gets better than a Jimmy G type extension, to be honest. Yellow Spy says, there isn't a team in the league with championship caliber players across the whole offensive line. If you got 2 or 3 guys, you're high on the list. I agree with that. Though I do like Detroit's offensive line a lot. Horse Blooded says, choose must sit 13 or 23 for a game. Other is the MVP. If I got to choose, I'm sitting McCaffrey.
Yeah, same. Good argument. That's a good counter to my case.
Mike Partridge gifted 5 the Krug Show membership. Here you go. Thank you, Mike. Thank you. I always give a little.
What are memberships? How does that work?
Oh, people pay memberships. They get some of the stuff a little sooner than some of the other people.
Oh, I see.
Some content a little sooner.
YouTube game going
a little sooner. Yeah,
it's pretty good.
We'll talk about it off the air.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Mike Partridge also says, still worth it to sign Ertz? I'd say yes. You want Ertz for the block. You just want Ertz so he doesn't go to Baltimore or one of these other spots. And I like Ertz, and I think Ertz, you got to me, it's Ertz is two valuable reasons for Ertz. He doesn't wind up with Baltimore, Philly, or Dallas. And if Kittle goes down, you got a real receiver at tight end as your number 2 guy.
To me, that's the bigger reason than the block. Why is nobody signing him? What's taking so long?
I don't know. Maybe he's asking for a lot. Maybe, he wants to win the Super Bowl. Maybe he's waiting to see who the best team is.
Wait till the Super Bowl.
Well, he might be waiting for the last second to see who he can sign with, or maybe nobody wants him. Maybe nobody wants him. Mike says rest Ward this weekend. No doubt. No Mooney Ward this weekend. And Loner Incognito says, do you think that the Niners will win out with a tough team like the Ravens and the Rams, which have been hard for us to beat?
No, they have a hard on.
A hard on to beat us. Okay. I don't know. I was hoping he wasn't saying that. I was moving words around to try to avoid hard on, but what the hell, it's YouTube. I think the Rams are going to be tough, but I do think the Niners are going to run the table. I do. I think they'll beat the Ravens. Now, if that game was in Baltimore, I'd take the Ravens. That game at Levi's, I'll be there. I'm taking the Niners on Christmas night. What do you think, guy? Niners, Ravens, Christmas night. What do you like?
I like the Niners at home.
Yeah. When do you go live again, man? When you and John go live? 3 o'clock?
Yeah, 3:05, something like that. Hour and a half.
Everybody go check out Guy and John.
Thanks, Larry.
Everybody loves your guys' stuff, man. You guys really kick butt. Great respect for you. Great respect for John. Respect for what you've built. Have had a chance to watch you guys on more than one occasion in the last 3 weeks. And, man, I love you guys when you guys go around the league and kind of hit on non-Niner stuff and kind of just move it around. You guys are really, really good. I was going to ask you, you mentioned you're from Davis. Did you guys meet in high school?
Yes.
I always wondered if you met at 95.7 The Game or if you met in high school.
No. So,
because you guys do have a rapport that seems deeper than, hey, I just met you last week or 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So you guys have known each other going back to Davis High.
That's right. Yep. I've always thought, I've never really been in the position. You probably have, of like when you do a show with somebody you don't, like people get thrown together all the time in the old radio business.
Yeah.
And I've always thought like, God, that would be tough. Because you spend a lot of time together arguing,
It is. Or somebody you just don't trust.
Right.
Because, that's really what it's about. It's about, hey, man, do you have a trust? And once you have a trust and a rapport, things really stem from there. And if you don't have that trust and you don't have that rapport, then it comes across the mic.
Yep.
One last shout out to the sponsors. Marin Autoglass on the bottom of the screen. If you shatter a windshield and you need someone to replace it, marinautoglass.com. New York style Italian sausage is the only kind of Italian sausage that I will eat. And of course, Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. By the way, I need to tell Guy and everybody else, check me out. During Niners Cardinals, we are going to be at Pig and a Pickle in Corte Madera for the watch party. We're going to do a little watch party at Pig and a Pickle. Here it is right here. Check it out. December 17th, 341 Corte Madera Town Center. We'll do the post game there. I'll be there from noon till 8. So stop by, have some barbecue, have a beer, say hi, then go do some Christmas shopping at Corte Madera Mall and come back, watch the post game show. Appreciate all of you guys doing that. A lot of people are coming to that. I'm looking forward
They
to
got good
it.
internet there?
I'm hoping. We're going to find out. I may have to double check that. I may have to bring my own hotspot. But, Guy, good stuff, man. We'll always love rapping with you, and hopefully we'll do it again soon.
Yeah, Larry, great to see you, man. Thanks for
also,
having me.
thanks to Underdog Fantasy and Mojo Fantasy, also 2 other sponsors of the Krug Show who we love, and they do a great job. Underdog Fantasy, Mojo Fantasy. Check them out. The link is in the description. Use the promo code Krug, and they will match you up to your first $100. Thanks to them as well for sponsoring the Krug Show. But Guy, awesome stuff, man. And you guys, how long will you stream for today?
I don't know.
Hour?
45?
Okay.
Hour?
You guys get in and get out.
Well, it could be an hour. It's pretty loosely planned usually, and usually longer than intended.
Yeah, there you go.
As you know.
Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Check out Guy and John at 3. And until next time, we're out. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly